Hi, my name is Sheryl, and the moment my father-in-law called during my interview, I knew something was off. He said, "Don't come home, it's done." What was done? Turns out, the house I helped build, the family I sacrificed for, they erased me. Behind my back, they rewrote the will, sold the land, and called it justice. But I found out too late. Or maybe just in time. There was something about sitting in a waiting room at 10:15 on a Thursday morning that felt both terrifying and oddly calm. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while I sat stiffly in the chair, palms damp, trying to keep my breathing steady. I glanced down at my heels, polished, practical, almost too formal, and reminded myself this wasn't just any interview. It was the first shot I'd had in years. I hadn't worked since the company downsized me during the pandemic. At 45, restarting wasn't just a challenge, it was like waking up in someone else's body. New rules, new fears. Still, I'd done the work, updated the resume, brushed up on certifications, rehearsed my lines in front of a mirror like an actor auditioning for her own life. The building was tucked in a quiet part of Austin. Clean glass walls, minimalist decor, and a front desk receptionist who barely looked up from her computer. It all screamed order, efficiency, control, things my life hadn't known in a long time. I rubbed the edge of my phone screen. My husband hadn't texted me good luck. The kids, his kids, technically, probably didn't even know I was here. And my in-laws, the only thing they seemed to care about was whether dinner showed up on time during family gatherings. But I was here now. Clean slate. New chapter. I closed my eyes for a breath. Let's start over, I whispered to myself. Thanksgiving the year before had sealed something for me. I stood in the kitchen for hours, basting, stirring, timing everything like a maestro, and still ended up sitting on the far end of the table like an afterthought. No one asked how I was. No one said thank you. My husband carved the turkey with the same cold hands he used to text under the table. His sister made passive comments about my contributions, and his mother pretended not to hear me speak at all. I smiled through it, for the sake of peace, for the illusion of family. But that day, something shifted. Quietly. I told myself then, you can fade away in this house, or you can get your life back. Today felt like my first real shot at doing the latter. My name was called. I stood, brushing invisible dust off my lap, and walked into the glass-walled conference room with my spine as straight as I could manage. The woman interviewing me, Judith, I think her name was, greeted me with a professional smile and a firm handshake. I sat down, legs crossed, one hand folded calmly over the other. She began, the usual warm-up questions, strengths, challenges, that sort of thing. I tried to stay in it, but my thoughts kept drifting. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. I'd repeated that line so many times it had become a chant in my head. I smiled, genuinely, as I answered the next question, my voice steady, my words confident. For a second, I felt it, that version of myself I thought I'd lost. Then my phone buzzed, loud, sharp. It vibrated on the glass table between us like a wasp trapped under a bowl. I glanced down. Father-in-law, it read. I reached to silence it, but the damn thing picked up. Sheryl? His voice crackled through the speaker. You need to come home. Right now. Something's happened. Judith's eyes widened. I froze. My hand trembled as I ended the call, mumbled an apology, grabbed my purse, and practically ran for the door. The elevator felt slower than usual. Every second crawled like a warning. Why me? Why now? He never called me. Never. Not unless someone was dead or something needed covering up. I pressed the lobby button 3 times, even though once would have done. My ears were hot, my chest tight. By the time I stepped into the parking lot, my phone was still in my hand. I called him back immediately. No answer. Traffic was light, but my thoughts weren't. I gripped the steering wheel harder than necessary. Images slammed into me like hail. My husband in handcuffs, his daughter crying, my house on fire. Irrational maybe, but real enough in my gut. I'd spent years playing peacemaker, Years holding together birthday parties, school pickups, insurance renewals, doctor visits. Nobody noticed until something went wrong. And suddenly, it was my responsibility to clean up the mess. And now this call, out of nowhere, while I was finally doing something for me. Was this a setup? A distraction? Or was someone genuinely in trouble? My grip tightened. I turned onto my street, the same row of red brick homes and trimmed lawns I'd seen 1,000 times before. Nothing looked different, but something was. Just as I slowed to turn into my driveway, my phone buzzed again. Same caller. Same name. I answered with a clipped breath. Sheryl, he said, calmly this time. Too calmly. I found something. You need to see it. Before your husband gets home. Ray was already outside when I pulled into the driveway. He was pacing in short, agitated circles near the garage door, arms folded tight across his chest. The man looked like he hadn't slept all night. A cigarette dangled from his fingers, trembling slightly, but he didn't take a drag. When he finally looked at me, his eyes darted away just as fast. I stepped out of the car, keys still clutched in my hand. Ray? He didn't greet me, just nodded toward the house. Come inside. You need to see this. There was no small talk, no pleasantries, just a cold gust of air as we walked into the house. Something about the silence inside felt wrong, like the air had thickened while I was gone. Then I noticed it. The attic hatch above the hallway still open, the old fold-out ladder creaking slightly. Dust hung in the sunlight like unsettled ghosts. No one ever went up there. Lewis said it aggravated his allergies. No one questioned it. Ray led me toward the dining room without another word. My stomach clenched. On the table sat a cardboard box, worn, slumped slightly on one side. It looked like it had been taped and retaped through the years. The top flaps were half open, revealing the edges of old envelopes, faded photo prints, receipts curled with time. There was even a USB stick with a label in black marker. Lighthouse. What is this? I asked. Ray didn't sit, just stood behind the chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. Found it buried under old Christmas junk. Wasn't looking for anything, just trying to clear space. I pulled the box closer. The paper inside smelled like mildew and attic heat. The first few photos were innocent enough. Lewis as a boy, school pictures, a birthday party in the 80s. I sifted through them slowly, until one stopped me cold. A color photo, not more than 2 years old. Lewis, shirt half unbuttoned, standing way too close to a woman who wasn't me. Her hand was on his chest. The timestamp read June. That same month, he told me he was doing weekly therapy in Houston. Alone. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Ray watched me carefully. There's more, he said quietly. I picked up an envelope. Inside, handwritten letters addressed to someone named Mel. Not me, not anyone I recognized. One of them talked about how he missed her laugh. Another mentioned a weekend trip that I knew never happened. At least, not with me. Why would this be in our attic? I muttered, more to myself than to Ray. He always said not to go up there, Ray said. That it was too dusty, too cluttered. I thought he was just being dramatic. Now I'm not so sure. My thoughts started racing, snippets of the last few years crashing into each other. Lewis insisting I never do the taxes, telling me not to touch his nightstand, locking his phone even from the kids. Always some excuse, confidential therapy, work stress, needed space. Damn it, I whispered. Was I blind this whole time? Ray let out a long sigh. I didn't want to believe it either, but Sheryl, I haven't trusted my own son for years. He's gotten good at hiding. There was a strange pain in his voice, almost like he was grieving. I don't know who my son is anymore, he said, barely above a whisper. I stared back at the picture. My hand trembled, not from rage, not yet, but from a realization heavier than anything I'd carried before. I had no idea who I'd been sleeping next to for the past decade. I wanted to cry, but nothing came out. Instead, I remembered the time Lewis held me after the miscarriage, how he kissed my forehead, told me we'd try again, that it wasn't my fault. I had clung to that moment like it proved his goodness, like it erased every cold look and quiet distance since. Was that real? Or was I just desperate to believe it was? Ray slid the USB stick across the table toward me. There's more on that. I didn't look. I figured, you should be the one. I took it and dropped it into my bag. I couldn't bring myself to plug it in. Not yet. I needed to breathe, to stand upright. Ray's voice turned low again. Whatever's on there, it'll change everything. You sure you're ready for that? I looked at him, dead in the eye. I don't think I ever was. But that doesn't matter anymore. With the box in my arms, I climbed the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. I reached the bedroom door, pushed it open slowly. Then my phone buzzed. One message, from Lewis. You're home early. Don't go into the attic. The house was quiet again, too quiet. After Lewis's message, I'd locked myself in my office and closed the blinds. I didn't even take off my shoes. The box from the attic sat beside me on the floor, but it was the USB drive that pulsed in my mind like a siren. I slid it into the laptop, and a soft chime echoed through the room. Lighthouse. That was the label. Just that word, in his handwriting, like it meant something to him. Or maybe to her. My fingers hovered above the trackpad. I wasn't ready. My stomach turned. I told myself maybe it was just old tax files or home videos from the lake house. But I knew better. I clicked. A single folder blinked into view. Watch me first. I took a breath so deep it shook. Then I opened the folder. The video file was labeled with a date, last spring, and the name Lake House Camera 3. I pressed play. The screen went black for a second. Then, a grainy feed came into focus. A room I didn't recognize at first. Dim. Quiet. Then my eyes locked on something familiar. A painting. One I had bought on impulse at a flea market. An abstract thing I hung at the lake house years ago. It still hung in that same spot. So this was our lake house. Then Lewis walked into frame. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't acting. He wasn't careful. He looked too comfortable. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up, sitting on the couch with his phone. He sounded smug. She has no idea, he said into the phone. Still thinks I'm driving to therapy every Thursday. My hands tightened on the laptop. She trusts me too much, he continued. I've been laying the groundwork for years. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. Then someone else entered the room. At first it was just a blur, a shadow passing the camera. Then the light shifted and I saw her, Valerie, my sister. She walked in like she owned the place. Her hair was pulled up, sunglasses still on her head, and she leaned down and kissed him, not on the cheek, on the mouth. I dropped the laptop. It hit the floor with a sickening thud. I didn't even check if it was broken. I just sat there on the carpet, staring at the wall, shaking. I felt something inside me shatter, not crack, break. Valerie, my sister. The same sister who held my hand through postpartum depression. Who told me Lewis was just stressed when I questioned his absences? The sister who stayed at the lake house more than I ever did. And now I knew why. I crawled to the laptop, pulled it back into my lap. Hit replay. She said it again, clear as day. She's never going to see this coming, is she? Lewis laughed. Not a chance. I played it 3 more times just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. Hatred doesn't come easy to me. Not after years of swallowing pain, choosing peace, convincing myself people just don't know better. But this was a different beast entirely. It crawled up my spine and settled behind my ribs. They planned this. Together. I grabbed my phone and called Delilah. She picked up on the second ring. I need to talk, I said, barely holding it together. Sheryl, what's wrong? I told her everything. I didn't spare a single detail. Silence stretched over the line before she finally said, You need to get ahead of this. She was right. It wasn't just betrayal, it was war, and I had evidence. Back it up, she said. Don't keep that USB as the only copy. I opened a cloud account I hadn't touched in years and uploaded the file under a hidden name I used for online recipes. It felt ridiculous and deadly serious all at once. As the upload progressed, I stared at the footage playing again in the background. Lewis and Valerie, smiling like two snakes in the sun. I didn't cry. Not this time. I couldn't afford to. I left the laptop on and tucked the USB back into its cap. As I walked down the hallway, I heard the sound of a key in the front door. Lewis, earlier than usual. I froze, then turned, scanning the bookshelves behind me. I slid the drive behind an old cookbook, the one with the pages stuck together from years of spilled sauce. I smoothed my blouse, took a breath. "Babe," he called out. "Everything okay?" I stepped out from the hallway, calm as ice. "Perfect timing," I said. "We need to talk." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I closed the laptop gently, like it might explode if I touched it wrong. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear anymore. Something else. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I slipped the USB into the pocket of my cardigan and stood still in the dim light of my office, listening to the creaks and sighs of the house. Every picture on the hallway wall seemed to mock me. Smiling faces, family vacations, anniversary dinners. They felt like props from a play I didn't audition for. I stared at one photo of Lewis holding our goddaughter, Valerie beaming behind him. How many of these moments were already rotten when they happened? A whisper came from deep inside me. I'd heard it before, back when things first started to feel off. But this time, it spoke louder. Demons are real, and ghosts are real too. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I was done being blind. I heard the front door open. It slammed a second later, and heavy steps started climbing the stairs. I turned slowly, pulling my cardigan tighter around me. Lewis's voice echoed up the hallway. "Sheryl?" I stepped into view, forcing my face into something close to calm. "There you are," he said, eyes scanning my face. "Why did you go upstairs?" I didn't blink. "I was getting a charger. Thought I heard something in the attic." His eyes narrowed. "You didn't hear anything." "Then maybe it was nothing." He took a step closer. "What were you doing in the attic?" The air between us thickened. His tone wasn't angry, not yet. But there was a sharpness beneath it, like a blade pressed flat against my skin, waiting. I tilted my head. "Ray called me. He said something happened. He sounded worried." Lewis looked down, exhaled slowly. "Ray needs to mind his damn business." He pulled out his phone, waved it in the air. "He called me too. Said you were snooping, that you were digging where you didn't belong." I stepped back, just slightly, enough for space. "Didn't realize the attic was off limits now." He stared at me, jaw tight. "You're hiding something." I could say the same. We stood there in silence, the kind that wraps around your throat, not your heart. He smiled, cold and tired. "You think you know what's going on here?" I kept my voice low. "No, but I know enough." He looked down at his hand, and for a moment I saw it. A tremor. Just like in the video, it wasn't big, just enough to remind me this wasn't a man in control. This was a man unraveling, and that changed everything. I softened my voice. "If something's wrong, Lewis, just tell me. We can fix it." He scoffed. "Help or betray me? Depends on which version of you I'm talking to." That made him pause. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing again. "You're not nearly as stupid as I thought." "No," I said, stepping forward. "I'm not." He looked away, muttering something I didn't catch. Then he turned back, voice colder. "Stay out of the attic. Stay in your lane." "For years," I whispered, "I didn't even know which lane was mine." He stared at me, something flickering in his eyes. Then he stepped away and walked toward the stairs. Before he disappeared, he looked back and said, "You don't know what you're starting." "Maybe not," I replied. "But I'm not stopping." He left. The front door slammed again. A minute later, I heard tires screeching down the street. I stood in the hallway, silence thick again. Then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one line. Get out. Now. It's not safe. I stared at it, then looked toward the attic hatch. I knew I should leave. Just go. Drive away. Burn it all down later. But my hand went to my pocket. The USB was still there. The truth was in this house, and I was the only one holding it. I padded upstairs, each step slower than the last. The hallway lights were dim, the kind of light that makes shadows look like people. At the top of the stairs, I reached for the attic latch. My fingers were just wrapping around the handle when I heard it. A click. Behind me. And a voice. Calm and deliberate. You shouldn't have come back here. I sat back in the chair, my fingers still trembling from the weight of Lewis's voice. That tone, calm, pressed down but full of threat, echoed in my chest long after he walked out. I could feel it in my rib cage, a vibration that hadn't settled. The hallway outside my office was dark except for the soft flicker from the kitchen light down the hall. I stared at that soft glow, like maybe it would somehow lead me out of this mess. It didn't. I reached into my pocket, felt the edges of the USB again, still there, still warm from my skin. I whispered, not really to anyone, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Because the truth was, if I showed him now, he could spin it, destroy it, bury it like everything else. But if I waited too long, he'd bury me. I stood, jaw tight. Courage isn't not being scared, I murmured. It's acting anyway. I turned to the desk and powered up my computer. The light from the screen glowed across my face as I opened my personal banking portal. I hadn't looked in weeks, maybe months. Lewis always handled it. More efficient that way, he said once. You don't need to waste your energy on numbers. Now I saw why. My finger hovered as I scrolled through my transaction history. There were transfers I didn't recognize, small at first. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Then one that made my chest tighten, a transfer out of our joint savings. 6 figures, disguised under a generic LLC name I didn't know. I leaned forward, opening tabs, comparing statements I had printed months ago. Dates didn't match, balances were off. And then I saw it. His name tied to a separate account I never knew existed. In my name. He was using my credentials, my identity. I screenshot everything, folders popping up fast as my heart rate. I uploaded them to a secure drive under an alias, copied the files to an external hard drive. I backed up the backup. This wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated erasure. And I was done letting him get away with it. I grabbed my phone and walked out of the study, down the hallway, into the living room where the Wi-Fi signal was strongest. I hit Delilah's name. She answered on the second ring. Sheryl? Her voice was low, cautious. You okay? No, I whispered. I found financials. He's been draining my accounts, quietly. For months, maybe years. I read her the shell company name, the 6-figure transfer. The silence on her end was deafening. Jesus, she finally said. You need to document everything, and fast. Don't email it. Use encrypted cloud. I'll get you someone to trace that LLC. He's moving money. That means he's preparing something. I know, I said. That's what scares me. She paused, then said something I didn't know I needed to hear. You're not powerless. You've got the receipts. You've got your voice. I bit my lip, eyes burning. He almost made me believe I didn't. That was when it cracked. Not a scream, not a sob, just a quiet collapse inside me. Years of silence, of brushing things off, laughing when he joked about me being bad with numbers. Years of nodding when he said, "Let me handle it." Trusting because I thought that's what wives were supposed to do. I remembered one night, 6 years ago, when a check I'd written to the shelter bounced. I asked Lewis. He smiled and said, "You must have miscalculated. Don't worry about it." And like a fool, I let that be enough. Now I saw it for what it was, not miscalculation, manipulation. I wiped my face, stood taller, and started gathering everything. I shut down remote access on my laptop, locked the files behind a password he wouldn't guess. I printed out pages of transactions, folded them into an envelope marked insurance. I wasn't scared anymore, not of him. Not of what I'd see next. I just wasn't going to be silent. As I stepped out of the study again, the air in the house shifted. Something subtle. A creak above me. Maybe the wind. Maybe not. I clutched my phone. The files were loaded. My thumb hovered over the icon, ready to send an anonymous tip to a local reporter I knew from church. Someone who owed me a favor. Footsteps. Light ones. Royce. He was coming down the stairs. "Sheryl," he called out softly. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer right away. I looked into the dark hallway where the truth still hung like smoke, and I whispered, "Not if we don't speak truth now." I sat alone at the kitchen table late into the evening, a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. Bank statements lay spread before me, printouts, screenshots, faded pages. My heart thudded. Every line felt like betrayal, every transaction a lie. I traced a string of withdrawals to names I didn't recognize, amounts that made no sense. Many fell on days I'd been with Ray or in meetings with my in-laws. The timing was too precise. They knew when I'd be distracted. I rubbed my eyes, reached for the USB again, then froze. It was still tucked in my cardigan pocket, waiting. I could barely speak, but I dialed Delilah's number. "I need your voice," I said, voice shaking. As I read off recent transfers, she listened, then said, "They're not just spending your money, they're stealing your life." I hit record so I'd have her words as proof later. Then I thought, who has this kind of access? Passwords? Codes? Backdoors? Royce's role at the bank crept into my mind. Leverage, privilege, control. Rage and sorrow rose within me. After all these years working, this was my backbone. They took that too. Fear crept forward. If I made a move now, I could expose the footage, but expose myself to danger. I remembered countless nights balancing bills, hiding debts, pretending everything was fine so no one would worry. A whisper in me shook a memory. "You've stayed silent too long." I centered myself. This was my life. I opened a secure email draft to Mara. Careful hints, readiness to share, warnings. My fingers hovered. Then my phone pinged. Royce's message. "Account glitch. Nothing serious. Don't worry." Anger flared. Gaslighting already. I typed back. "Glitches don't move hundreds of thousands." He called within seconds. Calm voice. "Stop overreacting." But behind him, on screen, I saw her. Valerie, silhouetted. My blood froze. She'd been in this with him. I ended the call. Standing in my kitchen, phone in one hand, USB in the other, the lights flickered. The back door's lock clicked. I spun around. Shadow. I screamed, "Royce?" A figure stepped forward from the darkness. He answered, voice low. "You were warned not to dig this deep." I called Mara and Delilah that morning, my voice calm but clipped. "Family meeting. My house. Tonight." I didn't elaborate. They didn't ask. Hours later, they sat with me at the dining table, quiet as I laid out everything. Footage, bank records, texts, voice memos, receipts. Mara's face didn't flinch. She was already scribbling down a strategy, affidavits, pre-drafted emails to news outlets, contacts in the DA's office. Delilah kept glancing toward the hallway like she expected someone to bust in at any moment. I handed them printed copies and flash drives. Then I took a breath, practiced once, twice. My opening line had to cut through everything. The years, the manipulation, the performance of politeness. I've kept quiet for too long, and it's cost me everything I used to believe in. I practiced the tone again, low and even. No stammering, no room for them to twist it. I asked myself, will they believe me? Will they turn on me like they've done to others? Then I answered myself, doesn't matter. I was already past the point of no return. When I stepped onto the estate veranda, it was just past dusk. The sun had dipped, but the warmth clung to the walls. Dinner was being served on long tables draped in ivory linen. Ramona, Louis, Charlene, Dawson, Valerie, every single one of them dressed like it was a fundraiser, not a family evening. They laughed quietly over wine, the sound hollow in my ears. I didn't wait for an invitation. I stepped into the center of the space and cleared my throat. Chatter died. Forks paused midair. I looked straight ahead and said, I've found things no daughter-in-law should ever see, and I will not remain silent any longer. I pulled the remote from my coat pocket, pressed play. A monitor lit up at the side of the room, a flicker, then footage, emails, wire transfers, time-stamped images of hidden cameras and silent rooms. Their eyes tracked every frame, and I watched them try to do the math of guilt, of exposure, of whether to play dumb or strike. Mara stepped forward, voice sharp. She read aloud from the documents, where the money went, how it was moved. Delilah passed out folders, one for each person in the room. Valerie snatched hers, barely opened it. You've twisted everything against me, she hissed. I didn't flinch. Ramona sent this, I said calmly, holding up a printed email. We had to make Maribel see it differently. I needed Celesta to play along. I clicked the remote again. The video started. Ramona, younger, sitting in a shaded room. Her voice low, trembling. I did what I did to protect our legacy. That girl, she wasn't ready to know the truth. I couldn't let Sheryl derail the entire family line. Silence followed. I saw the cracks widen. People shifted in their chairs. Someone, maybe one of the groundskeepers, said softly, She admitted it. That was all it took. A murmur began. My brother-in-law's wife slid her folder into her purse without a word. One of the cousins avoided my gaze completely. But others, neighbors, extended family, looked up at me with something new, understanding. I walked slowly through the room, making eye contact with each of them. I didn't smile, I didn't raise my voice. I just said, Truth is louder than lies. Louis stood up, red in the face. You think this proves something? This family doesn't fall apart over words on paper. His voice cracked mid-sentence. Charlene's nails dug into her wine glass. Ramona looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, her spine no longer straight. She didn't deny it. Not one word. I had the floor. And for once, they couldn't take it from me. Then, the lights flickered. A beat of unease passed through the room. I froze. Everyone glanced around, pretending it was nothing. But the electricity dipped again. Then a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Glass? Furniture? I didn't breathe. Someone's coming, I whispered. The air in the room dropped, cold, still. From the shadows of the hallway behind me, a voice came low and close. You should have stayed silent. The reception hall buzzed low with whispers and tinkling glasses as I stepped inside. The air was too still, too careful, like everyone sensed something was about to break. Mara placed the folder in my hand without a word. Inside, the deed. Real one. Not the version they passed around like candy after church service. I felt the edges press into my fingers. Solid, real, undeniable. I walked to the front. Heart hammering, breath tight, but steady. I cleared my throat. Tonight, I began. You'll see what truth looks like. I laid the deed flat on the podium. Let the name catch the light. Maribel Grady, not Charlene. The ripples moved quick. I saw Valerie stiffen. Ramona blinked twice, slowly. Mara stepped beside me, pulled out the original will, laid out the notarized contracts, pointed to the signature page. This document has never been legally superseded. She looked at me. I nodded, then I told them how it happened, how someone removed my name. How Charlene's was slipped in. I didn't shout. Just told it straight, line by line, date by date, no dramatics, just math, money, motive. I held up a page. These signatures, I said, weren't mine. And weren't hers either. I passed it to Delilah, who had the handwriting analysis results. Ramona's hand curled around her clutch, like she could squeeze her way out of this. Then I hit play. The backroom footage rolled. Ramona at her desk, Charlene beside her. They passed documents back and forth like two kids swapping secrets behind the teacher's back. I paused it at the moment Ramona signed, her lips tight, muttering, "Let's just get this over with." Silence followed. Not a soul moved. I stepped down, walked across the room, found Junei sitting near the back, hands in her lap, eyes wide but steady. I reached out. This is your home too. I didn't whisper it. I wanted them all to hear. I didn't care who flinched. She stood. I took her hand. Led her through the guests, through the open doors, out into the courtyard. Cameras flashed, mouths gaped. I turned back once and said, if I can't belong where I built hope, then we belong where truth lives. I stood there under the moonlight, held the USB above my head. Wind caught the edges of my scarf. People behind us murmured, unsure which side of history they were standing on. That's when Celesta made her move. She barreled out, face flushed. You think these tricks undo everything? She waved her phone in the air. Look at this. Your so-called proof is doctored. She played a clip. It was me, my voice, my room, but off, cropped, re-edited. It made me sound like I was bragging about setting the family up. It was fake, but slick, dangerous. I didn't take the bait. You've always controlled the story, I said, but never the truth. Her jaw clenched. She turned, muttered something low and bitter, then disappeared into the dark like she was part of it. People didn't follow her. They looked at me, some uncertain, some changed. Junei squeezed my hand. We turned to head back inside. As we stepped through the doorway, the lights snapped off. Just like that, gone. A beat of confusion. Then backup lights kicked in, humming low and dim. That's when I saw them. All along the walls, the framed photos Charlene had donated. Every one of them hung upside down. Every single one. Someone had been here, not just listening, sabotaging, sending a message. My phone vibrated. One line. They've already started cleanup. Evidence is disappearing. I didn't panic. I didn't run. I looked around that room, at the faces watching me. They'd tried to erase me. Now they were trying to erase the evidence. But I had more, and I wasn't done. The fog hadn't cleared, not fully, but it was lifting. I sat on the porch with a thick blanket over my shoulders, coffee cooling in my hands. The estate was quiet now, still, but not dead, more like a place that had exhaled after holding its breath for too many years. The breeze felt new, not like the night before, thick with secrets and tension. I looked out at the dew on the grass, the empty chairs from the gathering still scattered across the lawn. The wind rustled the leftover decorations. I should have been wrecked, but I wasn't. Not numb either, just light. Like that weight of always being the difficult one had finally been lifted. My phone vibrated beside me. Messages from people who never used to look me in the eye. I'm sorry. You were right. Thank you for standing up. Funny how silence breaks all at once. The screen door creaked open. Junei stepped out barefoot, her hair still messy from sleep. She didn't say anything at first, just walked over and leaned her head against my shoulder. You didn't have to fight for me, she whispered. I looked at her. That's what mothers do. I didn't say it like it was a duty. I said it like it was breath. Because it was. Later, we walked the garden path together, the same one where I used to hide from her questions, and she used to walk like she didn't want to be seen. Today, it was different. We talked about repainting the guest house, about putting up a greenhouse, about not running anymore. I don't want our truth to be built on damage, she said. I stopped walking, took her hand. It won't be. It'll be built on choice. She didn't answer, but her silence didn't mean fear. It meant peace. Around 9, a courier showed up, plain clothes, old Honda, said nothing, just handed me an envelope and drove off. My name was scrawled in a shaky hand across the front. The handwriting was unmistakable. Henry. It was dated 1 week before his stroke. I sat down at the kitchen table to read it. No music, no distractions. He'd known the will was tampered with, that Charlene and Ramona had shifted everything behind my back. And he hadn't stopped them. He said he'd tried, but they'd threatened to expose something from his past. Something about money. Maybe another woman? I don't know. He didn't say. But he wrote this. I should have stood by you. I was weak. I let fear win. I didn't cry. My hands trembled, but not from grief, from clarity. I was a coward, but I loved you, he ended. I folded the letter carefully and went back to the study, placed it next to the deed. 2 truths, 1 betrayal, 1 confession. This house may be filled with ghosts, I said out loud. But I'm the one alive. I picked up the phone. Called Mara. I want the transfer done officially. My terms. My name. She paused. I'll take care of it, I told her. You didn't just help me save this place. You helped me save me. You just needed a mirror, she replied. I walked through each room that afternoon, removed the old photos, replaced them with new ones that mattered. Junae laughing with paint on her face, Mara mid-argument in the kitchen, even Henry, an old picture from when we were young and stupid and trying. Then I saw the red blink from the new camera Mara installed above the fireplace. Recording, not spying. I stood in the center of the room. I won't hide anymore, I said to no one. Or maybe to everyone. A knock at the front door cut through the stillness. I opened it slowly. A man in a gray suit stood there, calm as if he were delivering a pizza. You may want to sit down, he said, holding a folder. I didn't flinch, just nodded and stepped aside. Let's finish what was started.